OpenAI and Sam Altman are gearing up for, wait for it, HOT AI SUMMER LFG, apparently.
That's right, baby. HOT AI Summer coming in. Compute go brrr. GPT-5 coming up hard.
Gavin, buddy, hey, what did we say? What did we say?
Don't go beast mode on intros.
That's right. No beast mode in intros. That's right. We're both over 40. Now, what did you say about GPT-5?
OpenAI is preparing to release GPT-5, and they've just released a new note-taking app, and Codex can access the internet. Kevin, is this going to be how the OpenAI movie will end?
Gavin? Are we going beast mode?
No, Kevin, the OpenAI movie is actually for real.
You know, the movie I want to see is the decades-long beef between Marc Zuckerberg and Palmer Luckey. They recently squashed that beef because they're teaming up to make super soldiers.
That's right, and Epic CEO Tim Sweeny says that a team of 10 could make Breath of the Wild with AI.
Oh, I'm sure that upset nobody.
Also, some massive AI video and image tools being released from Flux, Luma Labs, and HeyGen.
HeyGen. No, that's what I'm shouting at my bestie across the bar, and it's martini o'clock. HeyGen. Put your Birkin on the hook and let's down these mimosas. HeyGen. Also, Gavin, you're never gonna believe this one.
Oh, what?
Record labels are signing deals with AI music companies like Suno and Udio. What?
Who would have guessed? But more importantly, Kevin, VO3 has brought us something incredible. It is teaching cats how to swim.
The training regimen is rigorous. 6 hours daily. No breaks, no excuses.
Okay, on God, deadass, cat swimming is like peak GPT-5 core energy. It gives.
Yeah, this is AI for humans. We're busting for real.
No, that was a test. No beast mode in intros.
Fine. This is AI for humans, everybody.
What happened in the canon of this show that I'm the principal? When did that happen?
Yeah, I don't know, man.
You're just the cool kid who wants dank memes, and I'm the one who wet blankets you. All right, start the show.
Welcome to AI for Humans, everybody. And Kevin, it is HOT AI Summer LFG, according to Sam Altman.
LFG, baby. Let the farmers grow. That's what that acronym means, right?
Oh, is that right? I didn't realize that. That's interesting.
Let's friggin' go, baby. Sammy Altman trying to just chum the waters on the heels of Google I.O., stealing maybe a little bit of thunder in their pretty little Gemini jar. What does HOT AI Summer mean, Gavin?
Okay, so there's a couple big things to get into here. The biggest thing so far, I think, that we have to think about is GPT-5, which is their huge next new model that is planning on coming out as rumored in July. Now, these are rumors. Nobody really knows for sure, but like that is a big thing coming up. Sam has also, taken to the world of interviews and has been doing some interviews. In part, I bet you're right, to kind of like re-trigger the attention back to the OpenAI mothership.
It's the most exciting thing that's probably in the pipeline right now. And I think they thought maybe the Sears Portrait Studio photo shoot between Sam and Johnny Ive
would be something.
Would capture some more headline news cycles. But well, let's see what Sam is talking about here.
The models over the next year or 2 years are going to be quite breathtaking. Really, there's a lot of progress ahead of us, a lot of improvement to come. And like we have seen in the previous big jumps, from GPT-3 to GPT-4, businesses can just do things that totally were impossible with the previous generation of models. And so what an enterprise will be able to do, we talked about this a little bit, but just like give it your hardest problem. If you're a chip design company, say, go design me a better chip than I could have possibly had before.
Oh, what's it going to do? Put Taki powder on it?
Ooh, that sounds interesting.
How much better can chips get? We got salt and vinegar, right? We got flaming hot.
That's not the kind of chips, Kevin. That's not the kind of chips.
What else do we need?
You need to stop going
Pringles.
beast modes.
Pringles are still a chip. Just because they have a funky can, it's still a chip.
If you're a biotech company trying to cure some disease, say, just go work on this for me. Like, that's not so far away. And these models' ability to understand all the context you want to possibly give them, connect to every tool, every system, whatever, and then go think really hard, like really brilliant reasoning, and come back with an answer and have enough robustness that you can trust them to go off and do some work autonomously. Like that, I don't know if I thought that would feel so close, but it feels really close.
Kevin, it feels so close to me right now, as Calvin Harris said once in a very famous song. Sam is out there, pitching his wares again. I think just to extract a little bit about that, what he's getting at is this idea that you're going to send off your AIs to go think for you, right? And a lot of the stuff that we've seen coming out of these thinking models is a big deal.
First of all, the leap from GPT-3 to GPT-4, that really paints a picture. If you're new to this podcast and potentially newer to AI, you don't know the world before like ChatGPT. The difference from 3 to 4 was immense.
Yes.
You know, and we're now getting used to like every few months there's a new model or a new update or a new trick, a new something. But like it's a massive change in capabilities, unlocking a ton of new use cases, spawning thousands of businesses, crushing a few hundred in the process as well. But like that was massive. So that on the one hand, gets me very excited. And he's been saying that for a while, Gavin. Like, so that is the generational leap in capabilities that I am expecting.
Yes.
This is not a slightly new graphics card. This is a new Xbox. This is a whole new thing. It's the next generation. However, on the other side, he mentions stuff that we are already starting to see, which is these agentic behaviors. Send it off. It has access to tools, MCP servers, whatever else. It has tons of context. Well, we're seeing million token context windows. So on the one hand, it's supposed to be a complete sea change. On the other hand, it sounds like it's another iteration of stuff that we're already seeing. So are you expecting a 3 to 4 leap in this 4 to 5? Or are you expecting that it'll just be, more of the same? Will you be disappointed if it's
I
not?
have two kind of theories on this. So 3 to 4 is, as Kevin mentioned, is something that a lot of people have always said was like one of the biggest leaps, right? And we haven't really seen a leap like that. Although I would argue if you take the reasoning models and compare them to GPT-4 that we have right now, that is a very big leap. And maybe if you weren't from that to the next thing, it would feel that way. There is a conspiracy theory that is bubbling in my brain, and I don't know if this is real or not in any sort of way, that they put out 4.5, GPT 4.5, to kind of lower expectations so that they could then surpass them again.
You think they released a model to kind of sandbag a little bit? They wanted to get to the top of a chart.
Because they didn't make a big enough deal. They didn't make a huge deal of it. And one of the interesting things, Andrej Karpathy, who we've talked about on the show a ton, former Tesla and OpenAI engineer, very good follow on X and does a lot of like educational stuff, talked about the idea of 4.5, which is this massive model, works very slowly. Many of you who might have used it know that it's a very creative model. But if that is the training data now for the next reasoning model, he believes the leap could be very significant because it is a much bigger model. So what's going to be interesting to see is GPT-5 specifically this kind of unified model that will be the next version of the training? I think they're going to try to clean up all their naming stuff. I'm really curious to see if it's much better at the reasoning side of it because it's based on this larger model. And I do think, Kevin, it's important to also shout out this other thing that Sam said, because in that clip, he seems very optimistic about how great this is going to be. He also then went into another interview where he dropped this. We'll just play this little snippet of this interview because it's a very different tone.
I think there are going to be scary times ahead, and there's going to be a lot of transition. I'm very confident this can be managed. I think the more we can all do it together, the more likely we'll get something that works for all of us.
Who's managing it, Kevin? Are you managing the scary times ahead?
I guess I'm going to ask the agentic AI to manage it, and I'll go away for a few weeks. And when I come back, I hope it's managed.
Yeah. So anyway, this is like kind of speaking out of two sides up. Again, I think the biggest thing for everybody at home to know is like, we won't know until this comes out what sort of leap it is. I do believe if it is a significant leap, if it is close to 3 to 4 that Sam said, every conversation you will have will conceivably be about AI in the next year, right? Because it's that big of a deal.
I'm sure my friends love that every conversation they have with me is about AI. It doesn't matter if we're on the pickleball court or we're trying to watch a movie. It's going to go back to AI. But I think you're absolutely right because, like the release of ChatGPT was a major cultural uptick in people discovering, whoa, what is this thing? And that seems like nothing in comparison to what these models and these tools do now. So if we get what feels like a generational leap come July when this is rumored to be released, all bets are off. Everybody is going to be screaming from the mountaintops.
Yeah, and there's already a couple small things that are dropping soon. Supposedly OpenAI O3 Pro, according to Sam Altman, is coming soon. This has been rumored for a while. In fact, it's delayed versus where it was supposed to come out right now. I'll be curious to know if that comes out prior to this. It might, but also they've now unleashed Codex on the internet, which is their coding platform, which means that your AI coding tool can now directly access the internet. Which one of my favorite things about this tweet from Sam Sam, because Sam, took some time to tweet. He took like 10 days off from tweeting and then started tweeting up a storm. In this tweet, he says, Codex gets access to the internet today. It is off by default, and there are complex trade-offs. People should read about the risk carefully and use it when it makes sense. So one thing to know about Codex getting access to the internet is like, this is always the question of like, what does an AI look like when it has full steam ahead on being able to read everything and do everything?
Yeah, I mean, that's true. But look, as excited as I am, it's finally now at parity with other models that can code and had access to the web before. So it's like other companies are facing that, that head on. I don't know if Codex can do things they can't yet. I haven't put it through its paces. But one thing that did happen, Gavin, we're recording this, surprise, surprise, on a Wednesday, and ChatGPT for Business just got a ton of updates. This might get in the weeds a little bit for some if you're just like a personal user, and this will have benefits for you down the line. But for right now, for the business users, they did a couple things which are pretty massive. One, ChatGPT can now natively connect to all of your databases. And don't get me wrong, this is very quickly going to trickle down to the individual users, but we're talking, Google Drive, Dropbox. If anybody uses OneDrive, okay.
Kevin, I know what this is going to be
storage.
used for. We already know you've got all these databases you've been generating for 20 plus years of fictional character feet that you are now very excited to be able to search through and surface whenever you need them.
And I need it to, if I say I want feet in jam or jelly, it needs to know the difference.
Good point.
Okay.
Good point.
And if it's a character stomping on lasagna versus stomping on grapes, it should know the difference. Exactly. Okay.
And that can do that
Ogres and
now.
trolls are different, and it can do it, right? I don't have to label my directories. I'm meticulous. Point is, now it can connect directly to all of your files. Now, why does this matter? Well, this gives for individuals, it'll eventually give it way more context on your life, your businesses, your creative pursuits, et cetera. On the enterprise level, I have been, and I know you've been asked to consult on this too, Gavin, no shortage of companies screaming, how do we integrate all of our data into a system that spins up strike teams that work within a division and they come up with tools. And then you start building workflows and pipelines and looking at 16 different software tools that can bolt this onto that. And while OpenAI's demonstration today seems pretty rudimentary, you connect it to a thing and you can query it. It does respect the permissions of the users, which is massive in an organization. So an intern doesn't have access to like high-level engineering docs or something like that. Potentially within a household, you can share documents, but if you are keeping information a secret, like your feet pics repository, you don't have to worry about the misses.
Maybe you have a separate account then
coming across
it. Why not, right?
Look, maybe you do all of your work inside of an aluminum foil-lined Faraday cage. Maybe that's where you store your thumb drives, okay? And she doesn't need to know what happens in there. But this is big that this is rolling out along with MCP capabilities, which we've gotten into the weeds about MCPs in the past, but just know it means that it allows OpenAI's AI to talk to other AIs fairly effortlessly. And so suddenly you can go from a system that has a basic understanding of itself to a system that understands AI systems everywhere, and you can get really powerful workflows. Sam has said in the past, and this is where I'm hoping to connect the dots again, where I'm talking about grandiose statements that don't come true. He has said the mistake that many make are trying to over-engineer and build for the current shortcomings of the models as they exist. This is one of those things where so many companies and individual creatives or contractors have gone out and been like, I'm going to engineer a thing that lets an AI talk to all of your documents. Well, guess what, friends? Google has their version, Amazon has their version, OpenAI just rolled theirs out now. And when it trickles down to the individual user, that could be the Kleenex moment for AIs that talk to all sorts of
And
data.
maybe even more importantly for these AI companies, the pay for the Kleenex moment, right? Like where the idea is that suddenly instead of because there's a lot of studies about like how people are using AI in business and like a lot of experimentation, but not like a lot of money that's set aside. And we know that both Anthropic and OpenAI's, business model has gone up and they've been making a lot more revenue. This could unlock even huger amounts of revenue because if you can imagine all of the businesses in the world, if you're suddenly locked into an OpenAI ecosystem, that's a big deal when all your data is there. And I think that is going to be the fight going forward. In fact, there's a story that kind of tangentially connects to this. Claude and Windsurf are kind of vibe a little bit. This is a vibe coding platform that we know that OpenAI is buying, that they're buying for $3 billion. They basically lost access to their specific fast pipeline to Claude models. And the CEO came out and said a kind of a long description of what this is. They don't really know why. But Kevin, this definitely feels like some drama stuff that has happened around these two companies because of lock-in, right? We talked about with Google's very expensive AI Ultra plan. Part of the goal here is to try to get companies to lock into a specific OpenAI ecosystem. And, if Windsurf has access to all of Claude, it might mean that by cutting Claude off, Anthropic seeing this and being we have to get locked in for our stuff as well.
Well, I don't know if you saw the other rumors that were swirling about that there might be an Anthropic/Apple collaboration going on, which could have something to do with that. They're talking about Xcode, which is Apple's coding platform. I use it all the time. I am astonished at the lack of AI in it.
Yeah.
Even Android Studio, if you're building Android apps or anything in that environment, at least it has Gemini built in now and is getting better. So Apple needs their solution. Anthropic and Claude makes a lot of sense.
Yes.
And that might be some of the reason there. It could be the OpenAI deal as well. So, tough to say, but really interesting the way everybody's going for lock-in. And again, to the point of connecting to all of your documents, that plus memory equals a much more difficult switch for an individual or an enterprise.
Yes.
When they're 6 months down the road and this AI knows everything about them,
yes.
For them to leap to another AI might be really tough. So that helps for the lock-in.
And the only other quick thing that came out of this business thing that is interesting, but maybe not fully featured yet, is there's a record mode that they are introducing into the enterprise teams and education system where there's going to be a button on your ChatGPT and you can record a meeting, at least locally, it sounds like, and it's going to record all of your meeting notes. It's going to be accessible as a thing that you can get into. Kevin, it seems like to me this is a little not fleshed out because the most useful version of this would be something that could be a plugin into, say, Zoom or to Google Meet, because how many meetings do you have where everybody's in the same room? Not that many anymore, right. But this is a movement towards the same thing. And again, it is lock-in. If you have data from your company that is in one place, then it does become very searchable. On the other hand, it also kills, conceivably, a number of AI startups, like we have said again and again, there are AI startups out there that are trying to do this across many different platforms. If each of these suddenly has their own version of this, sorry, buddies, that might be the end of it.
Well, listen, I'm a Nathan Fielder fan. I promise this will connect. Taking notes on a meeting is one thing, but rehearsing the meeting in advance with fake AI personas of the people you're going to meet, Gavin, well, that sounds a little different, right? Maybe Black Mirror-ish. Well, Moderna's CHRO Tracy Franklin has something to say along those lines.
Ooh. I've created profiles in a GPT of our executive committee, and I have scenarios of when two people are maybe at conflict, or when I have to go in with an opinion or a recommendation, and how might the group react to my recommendation, or if I'm having a really bad day and I need to understand myself and why I'm triggering. I actually have a completely interactive coach, therapist, and teammate for me that I use all the time. It's been my favorite thing. And I've said,
Gavin, circle of trust.
Do you do this too?
Do you have a Kevin GPT that you run the ideas by? Because I'm going to blow up.
But now I really do want one. Now I'm going to go out and create a Kevin GPT.
How are you going to prompt that, Gavin? I'm just curious what the first two sentences might be.
You don't worry about that. I'll keep that secret. I mean, this is an interesting thing. Again,
you are a professional has-been, a C-tier Platinum Plus cable television whodunit.
No.
A footnote in the history of never.
Hey, you have a Wikipedia page still, Kevin. That's something. I want you to make sure you put that in your back pocket. That's still something.
Please don't update it, anyone. It does not need to know about my RV phase or my convertible hiking pants on television phase.
Again, this is another thing that shows you how this business side of AI is something you can't discount, because we're here talking about what's the cutting edge look like, but the money will be made on the business level. Kevin, the other thing that's important to realize about all this stuff is that the dramas around this, there will also be money made on that, because there is going to be a movie made of the OpenAI Sam is he or isn't he CEO saga that we covered very specifically on the show last year. Andrew Garfield has been cast as Sam Altman. The other thing I really liked about this is if you saw Nora, the Best Picture winner, the Russian bald guy, he is going to play Ilya, and that guy's amazing. I love that guy in that movie. So if you know, Ilya Sutskever is the guy who kind of helped lead this ouster moment and then got kind of pushed back when Sam came back. Ilya then went on to start and is still in the middle of a company called Safe Superintelligence, which we have not heard a single thing about for a year. But he and his co-founders and arguably a bunch more people are up in the mountains making super intelligence right now. Kevin, it's just an interesting thing to see how quickly these things are happening now.
While all that drama was going down, like that's what you and I were texting back and forth. And I think everybody in the bubble as well were like, oh, this is the third act. No, wait, no, this is the third act. Yeah. Oh man, this is going to play out so great, because it was pure drama unfolding on Twitter and behind closed doors and in the rumor mill. So I'm psyched for it. Is there anybody else you'd like to see play Sam Altman?
You know, it's a really interesting question. I've been thinking about this. I mean, Andrew Garfield had a role in the social network, so there's an interesting connective tissue. But of course, the person that most clearly is Jesse Eisenberg, right?
Sure.
Jesse Eisenberg is so good at playing nebbish-y sort of characters and did Mark Zuckerberg so well in the social network that it's hard to see anyone else. Oh, you know who might be really good? Speaking of Jesse Eisenberg, you know, Kieran Culkin could be interesting in that role if he was able to do it. Because he's kind of small and kind of has but maybe his energy is too much. Anyway, it'll be interesting to see. Andrew Garfield feels a little too suave to me to play Sam Altman, but we will see.
Oh, Sam's going to take offense to that, Gavin.
This is not about dissing on Sam. He's a charismatic young man.
Sammy is a very suave gentleman.
If you want to cast yourself in something, you could cast yourself in the role of helper to AI for humans. That's right. We need you to subscribe. We need you to like this video. We need you to be aware that you are part of our army. You are part of the people that spread our message. Last week's YouTube video was, Kevin, by far our most YouTube video episode of all time. And that is because of people out there.
I'm really sorry to hear that. Yeah. It was an okay episode. It was all right. I promise it gets better. So if you're a returning champion to AI for Humans, thank you so much. Literally, you're the only way Gavin and I are able to spread the message of this thing. So please share it with your friends and family. Give the thumbs up. Click the subscribe. It costs you nothing. If you listen to it on podcast, leave a 5-star review. And also, huge thank you. There's this contingent of very kind people who give us $5 a month on Patreon, and we use that to pay for editing and for a bunch of AI tooling as well, so that helps immensely. Thank you all for helping out this little endeavor of ours. We appreciate it.
Absolutely, and thankfully Kevin and I were able to do this podcast because we squashed our 10-year beef, just like two other people in the industry, Palmer Luckey and Mark Zuckerberg.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you backstabbed me for that cute little late night thing and left the great gravy train, we were all chugging along. Boy, howdy did I write you off. But we're back together because, time heals all wounds. Palmer Luckey, founder of Oculus, amazing engineer, created, really responsible for VR as it is today. Didn't create VR, but really brought it back into the fold. Unceremoniously ousted from, at the time, Facebook, now Meta. And was very vocal about it after a short period of time. And I actually appreciate how vocal he was about it, because he talked about how difficult it was for him emotionally and intellectually, how Anduril, his new defense company, was the let's see if he got it in you twice kid sort of thing. And clearly he did have it in him twice. The company's doing amazing. Well, a lot of documents have been leaked since Palmer was ousted, and he said it seemed like Mark Zuckerberg wasn't really at the helm making the decisions about Palmer's ouster, that it might have been others that are no longer at Meta anymore. And it's a very roundabout way to them getting together, taking a photo in what could be, I don't know, the lobby of a rainforest cafe or Meta.
What if that's where they were? I would love to see the two of them at a rainforest cafe, underneath the frog, looking up, and the frog's just sitting there.
Volcano! 100% happy to be a fly on that wall. I would pay for the dinner. Point is, they squashed the beef because they want to make super soldiers. Palmer was touting a new vision system called Eagle Eye for soldiers for a long time. That was going to be an augmented reality display that, in his vision, every soldier should have on their noggin when they are deployed in the battlefield. And the way this works is that it creates a mesh network of communication, helmet to helmet, where if you, Gavin, are on one point in the battlefield and you have eyes on an enemy, some sort of vehicle, an interesting point of reference, it can beam that visual data, those coordinates, an outline of another soldier, whatever. It can enhance my vision with the data that you have gathered, with the data that an autonomous drone flying about has gathered, and give us a far more detailed picture of what is going on in the battlefield. And, makes sense. I'm sure it will be great fuel for the bipedal robots that'll eventually be running around on the battlefield, but that's their vision for soldiers today.
Yeah, I mean, there's two things I want to mention here. One, I don't know, Kev, if you heard this, but there was an incredible interview with Palmer on the Core Memory podcast. A guy named Ashley Vance, who broke away from a major tech publication to make his own stuff. You should definitely be following Core Memory. I listened to the whole 2 hours, and I know you've been a Palmer fanboy for a long time, and I have to say, what was really interesting listening to this, I always am like, I'm not super political, but like Palmer was very, very on the right. And like, I was trying to kind of get a sense of like where he landed and what he was. This interview with him, it feels very reasonable. And I do not think he is like an extremist in some form. That was just my take. I know some people might think that, but I thought it was a very reasonable interview. I do suggest you go listen to this. Like, it's a really interesting thing. The other side of this, in this interview, he talked a lot about the idea of how these VR helmets need to be different than consumer AI. And he was pointing out the differences between what like Apple has to develop and deliver for consumers to do like the Apple Vision Pro versus what these helmets need to be, right? Because in the helmet, it's really about functionality for soldiers on the ground. And that is a big difference than like, a nerdy guy on their couch trying to have the ultimate entertainment experience. It's all these little things you don't think about when you think about like defense mechanisms and all that stuff. And the thing that really this stood out to me, if you've been following the news, you clearly saw the weird drone attack that Ukraine unleashed on Russia in the last week, which is one of these really fascinating ways of looking at how the future of warfare works now. So when you think about the future of warfare and you look at what's going on now, it is exactly this kind of thing that is going to lead to whatever the next stage of that is. Now, you may not love the fact that like robots will be fighting for us, but I do believe, and Palmer even says this in the interview, this is how we save lives, right? You save lives in training by doing this, but also you save lives on the battlefield. And eventually, maybe it is drones fighting drones. And then who knows what that feels like, but it is a very different way of looking at battlefields in general.
Yeah, and again, don't take a second to think about what happens when one side runs out of drones. We don't think about that. That's not a thing. It's just metal on metal. It's basically, but what was it, BattleBots?
Yeah.
And then everybody goes home happy, and we all share our resources because we live in a world of abundance.
Also,
right?
Don't think about what happens when one side suddenly turns to understand how to control themselves versus the human being controlling. All of this is not worth thinking about now. We're not going to think about what this means. We're just going to talk more about AI video tools, Kevin.
I did you such a disservice as a friend and co-host too, because like you were making like really solid points, but all I could think about was a soldier on the battlefield trying to like pinch zoom a stock widget because Apple built their thing. It's like they're under fire, and it's like, no, window, get out of the way. Siri, close the Siri.
Oh my God.
Can
you imagine having to be in the battlefield and using Siri to control it? And like, you set a timer for like yesterday morning and I can't turn it off, sir.
Here's what I found on the web for how to stop the bleeding. No!
As Alexa, it's like, here's a blog spot from 2011 about dog fur. We should move on. There's a big story brewing in the AI audio space, which I know you'll have a lot of thoughts on. Suno and Udio, the two big players in this space. And I kind of think of Suno as the big player, but Udio is still up there. They're both really interesting AI models. They are in talks with major labels to not only make a deal, but give them some percentages of their company. So let us talk a little bit about this and about the history of this.
You don't say, Gavin. I was patting myself on the back as hard as I could. Yeah. I think you shared this sentiment with me, I don't know, over a year ago when it was like, oh, the labels are going to sue. This is going to be a big deal. And I said, the genie's out of the bottle and there's too much money on the table for it to be upset. And I was like, eventually it's going to be a negotiation, and oopsie, don't you know it, suddenly the artist rights thing is not going to be they're going to get some pennies, maybe fractions of a fraction of a penny after the labels get what they get. But there was just too much at stake. So I'm not surprised to see that deals are being made here.
So, something I thought about with this is that GPT-4o's image gen moment, I think, can be seen by different people in different ways. Obviously, a lot of the anti-AI people see it as like, oh, they ripped off these, the Ghibli IP, and they're making all this stuff with Ghibli. Well, the thing I've thought about with AI music, and I'm sure you thought about this before too, is that like, I kind of would love to be able to make, whether it's like a parody version of something or like use another song as a jumping off point and like use either that artist's voice or that artist's melody for that thing and remix my own stuff. And it's really hard to do that. You can do that open source. There are ways that you really have to kind of go deep on it. So I'm curious to know, like, in the future of this world where Udio and Suno have made these deals, it will be really interesting to see, like, can I, a song that's like, again, we mentioned Calvin Harris's Feel So Close to the Top of the Show, right? Which is a very classic, like, dance track. I'm a fan of that song. It's super fun to listen to. What if you could take that song and, like, insert your own lyrics and, like, make your own version of that, not to make money off of, but you would be able to remix it using Calvin's voice track and maybe the actual sound and the beats and the way the thing rises up. That all feels like super compelling to the mainstream in a way that's different than just making music from scratch. Does that make sense to you?
I think it does, yeah. And Mitch Glazer, I want to say Chief Executive Officer of the RIAA, said, quote, "The music community has embraced AI."
Yeah. I don't know if that's 100% true. Some people have.
Okay, but that's what he's saying.
Timberland has.
And we are already partnering and collaborating with responsible developers to build sustainable AI tools centered on human creativity that put artists and songwriters in charge. So that is the head of the Recording Industry of America.
What do you think the percentage these companies had to give up, Kev?
I mean, it's so hard to say because it's, all of the training data goes into the big pot and gets stirred about, and then something comes out on the other end. So will they say, hey, based off a percentage of a particular artist that went into your data set, we're going to do that? Or do they have to build in tools that can reference what percentage of an artist was used in the output? Or maybe they'll just blanket say, hey, guess what? You're going to get a Mr. Wonderful royalty on every account that signs up
1%,
right?
1% of everything.
That is fine, actually, as long as the artists in the end also get their piece, because time and time again, that's the thing we saw with streaming. And then you see artists coming out saying, hey, you streamed 9 million sessions of my song and I got $50. Well, that doesn't feel quite right.
Absolutely. I think that's an important thing to think about. And also maybe acquisition targets for both Apple and Spotify, these two companies. Okay, Kevin, another big story. Tim Sweeny, CEO of Epic Games, is coming out and saying some positive things about AI.
Well, they pressed the AI button and it might have been a bad idea, but in truth, there's no unpressing that button.
I want to read a little bit of his quote here with an interview with IGN. He came out and said that AI characters giving you the possibility of infinite dialogue with a really simple setup for creators means small teams will be able to create games with immense amounts of characters and immense and interactive world. What would it take for a 10-person team to build a game like Zelda Breath of the Wild in which the AI is doing all the dialogue and you're just writing some character synopsis? Kevin, what is your immediate take on this idea?
I am angry, but I don't know why, and I'm going to throw out my caps lock and just point me at a URL. I'm ready to flame.
You sound like most of the gamer commenters out there in the world. By the way, so this is something we've been talking about for a while, that this idea that gaming teams will get smaller. I know that a lot of very smart people in the gaming world are also tracking this, and I want everybody to know that this, obviously coming from Tim Sweeny, this is a big thing. He is kind of planting a flag in the ground, as has John Carmack, has other people in the AI space. Tim, just to be clear, is the leader of really one of the biggest game companies in the entire world, Fortnite, Unreal Engine, all this stuff. So they just had the Unreal Expo, which is where they debuted a lot of awesome new things. Witcher 4 footage, which I don't know if you saw, looked amazing, but this is a big deal.
But again, one of the biggest empowerers of creators and creatives. That's Epic. A lot of people use their tools. They use their engines, not just in gaming, but in motion pictures.
Yeah.
So look, I fully subscribe to this. We've talked about the barbellification of all things, which is the middle is going to be eroded. And on one side, you're going to have individual content creators that are making feature films that might look a little AI at first, but eventually will rival the Hollywood AAA gaming, massive multi-million-dollar giant team GTA 12 stuff over on the other end. Yeah. And I know people fear of the interim and the job displacement. I completely understand that. And, we don't need to dive into that here, but just for a second, compartmentalize that and go, okay, if you were at, let's say, a company that had a team of 30 and that is no longer feasible, now you're wondering what to do. Maybe you team up with 3 or 4 others and you build a massively multiplayer game leveraging AI, because you can generate that many art assets once you define the style. You can voice that many characters once you decide what they should sound like and what their personality traits could be. You can vibe code server architecture to just get you up and running to a playtest and maybe get some fans and get funding. So I'm not saying you should completely forgive or forget everything else that's over there that could be bad or potentially wrong, but open yourself up to what some of the most celebrated game designers and creatives of all time are saying, which is this is going to be revolutionary and it's going to empower individuals to make amazing products.
100%. And the other thing to think about is if you're a specialist really in any industry, unless it's AI model training, I would say think of the generalized version of what you want to do going forward, because you will be able to do many more jobs with AI's help. So and what I'm saying that in the games business is like you may have specialized in a specific type of animation, or you may have specified in a specific genre of something. If you and a small team can be more generalists and think about ways you can split up your work amongst yourself. I mean, Kevin and I have done this in the kind of secret project we're working on. There's all sorts of ways that you can open the door to this. So to me, it's cool to see Tim Sweeny coming out and saying this. I think we're going to be going through this a little bit. I mean, obviously, Breath of the Wild is an amazing piece of a work of art, as is like many of the Nintendo games. I don't think he means per se that like it's going to be exactly there yet, but he can see a world where it gets to it.
If 10 people make Breath of the Wild, that does not diminish Breath of the Wild.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's an amazing thing for those 10 people to make another game that people absolutely love and still play to this day. So let's not be upset that it's 10 people doing it potentially. Okay, you mentioned our super secret project. As much as we love to pontificate about the future of all things AI, as much as I love vibe coding and the way it's unlocked me being able to develop things, and others are claiming that as well, you and I are hunting for a full stack developer, someone with years of experience and expertise. You and I know the tools and what they can do and how you can breathe apps and experience into existence. But there's still very much, and I still think going to be very much a role for expertise.
Yes.
You know, for by the way, if you happen to be a full stack developer out there,
reach out, everybody, reach out.
Or someone with audio engine experience or whatever. Like we
are
reach out to us.
We're hiring for real. Yeah.
Figure it out.
Kevin, Flux Kontext came out last week. This is Black Forest Labs' update to their Flux image model, which we love. We've loved for a while. They have come out with Kontext, which allows you to basically swap in different versions, but keeping everything the same. If you know OpenAI image sourcing, this is a lot of control network. It's a lot of that sort of stuff. So you can put an image of something up and hopefully get back the same thing or match a style in a specific way.
And I'll point out, it's natural language editing as well. So if you snap a picture of yourself and say, hey, give me a mohawk or put me in a cool leather jacket like Jensen, it can do it. I know you played around with it. I very briefly poked at the API and tried to take a person and just modify their clothing, which is an example that everybody is like, oh my God, this is amazing. I got to be honest, not too impressed with the results. It put the clothing on the person, but in the meantime, completely modified their face and the pose and everything else. And I was just like, that to me is one of those examples that should just work.
There was a great tweet thread from Min Choi, king of the AI tweet threaders, but he talked about a use case where it could up-res and help old photos. That there's a lot of good examples in there. There was another guy who went by at 8bit_E who showed what Flux Kontext plus WAN video and Comfy UI all together could do. So you can see in a really interesting open source workflow, if you're deep in that space, you could do a lot of interesting stuff. But okay, my examples here, if you look in the drive there, I wanted to see what I could do quickly, because in my use case, what I'm trying to figure out is like, first of all, is this better than something like 4.0 Image Gen off the shelf? So I used a couple models. First, I used Flux Kontext Pro, which is their basic like swap out genre look for something else. So on the Flux Kontext Pro page on Replicate, you see Black Forest Labs, and this is a big thing where you're trying to see like how it transforms something into the other. In this instance, it says make a 90s cartoon. So I wanted to use that exact same prompt to see what I could do. And then I compared it to 4.0 Image Gen. So if you see in the drive, I took our thumbnail from last week and I just used the exact same prompt that they had here. And I put it through Flux Kontext Pro. And it's not bad, right? You can see like it's a kind of an interesting output. Like it gets the text right. I don't think it's like amazing, but it does look like the 90s cartoon. But then Kevin, go and look at the version I did with 4.0 Image Gen, which again, we've had our problems with, but to me, much more 90s cartoon, it almost like the text almost looks better to me. Our faces are definitely better. So this goes to the point of like, I think if you're really good at using open source tools and Comfy UI, this is going to be massive for you because it's a door you can open. The other thing I used was Flux Kontext Max, which in their example shows how you can take a logo and put it in location, and it's a beautiful sort of 3D shadowed logo. I did the same thing. Now, granted, our logo maybe not fit as well, but I did the same thing with Flux Kontext Pro and 4.0 Image Gen. And again, I have to say, like, the better version of it was kind of 4.0 Image Gen. If you look at the two different versions, like it put it, I used the same prompt and it put it in location. Now, the Flux Kontext Pro came a little closer to holding on to stuff, but if you see the examples, they're not perfect, right? It's not like it's a major thing that didn't feel like a huge leg up to me.
But Al for Humans?
Yeah.
Is that about Al Borland or Weird Al? Like, which Al is that?
Yeah, I mean, it totally
that.
got it wrong, right? Like Al for Humans, it didn't. It thought that was AI for humans. So in my general experience, if you are a open source maxi, if you love Comfy UI, this is great. If you are more trying to just do something simple, I still think 4.0 Image Gen is probably better at a lot of this stuff than you might need. And that was my initial take on it. Okay, Kev, another thing I tried quickly, HeyGen Avatar 4 came out, which, is their most updated talking avatar feature. Just to show you, like, they did give us some credit, so I want to be clear about that. I got some credits for free to try this out. I think it's good. If you play the first clip, you'll get a sense of, like, I basically took a single screen grab from a mobile video I made to see what I would look like, so you can play that for everybody here.
This is my test of HeyGen's Avatar 4. I was given some credits to check it out, and I'm wondering, do I need to do this anymore?
Well, you got Jordan Belfort mouth.
I know.
You got Wolf of Wall Street mouth.
I really do. It's pretty
that.
crazy, like big choppers.
Please,
right?
if you're getting the audio only, go to this and watch it and tell me he's not about to sell you a pen.
Yeah.
Like that was full wolf mouth.
So I got some, it's what's so interesting about this to me, and I've said this before with AI avatars, is like, look, it will work. And one of the other big pushes for them is like virtual avatars. And like the difference, really the only main thing I have problem with is the teeth look different than my teeth, and there's a little funkiness to it as well.
Full disclosure, I use HeyGen almost daily on some of my AI products. I've known about these updates, but couldn't say anything.
Yeah, sure.
So I'm glad they're finally here, because I think the gesture support, which maybe we'll get to, and their new video editor, which is really like a text file editor, is super interesting to me. But for this avatar version, Gavin, what did you have to do to train it on yourself?
Nothing. Single picture. So that's the thing. Like, so this is a single screen grab. So that is very cool, right? But, in some ways, like, it's not that far off in terms of what you can do with Hedra, all these other lip sync tools.
Correct.
And I will say, to your point about, you've been using this on the enterprise side, I think from a value standpoint, if you are really doing a lot of work or really high-end work with one model that you have created, like there's real value probably in HeyGen's like backend. The other thing, Kevin, I'll show you is I took a screen grab of our we got to come up with a name for our Terminator character that we put in our thumbnail. So I tried to make this character speak as well, because to me, again, the biggest thing is like, how do you do characters that aren't humanoid? How does it recognize faces? And it didn't do amazing with that either in some form.
Haha, Kevin and Gavin, the world isn't ready for me. Avatar 4 Bender.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I've seen some examples where it works incredibly well of animating like, weird characters or Pixar-like animals or whatever. That particular test was a little...
And it might just be like how it
foresees
it, but like, again, all this is just getting better all the time. And if you really want to dive in, there's an hour-long HeyGen keynote.
There's a keynote presentation.
There's a keynote.
I will say, so the editor, which is interesting, is because, they're trying to rethink the way video editors work. If you've ever done any video work, you know that it's usually layers, and it's like, your footage with your graphics on top and maybe some sound design below. They're getting rid of that almost entirely and going for, you have your script, and then if you want a graphic to appear, you can go place it where it needs to appear, but you can highlight the words and say, this is where the graphic comes in, this is where it goes away. Similarly, you could take a script of Gavin saying, welcome to AI for Humans. I could highlight welcome and say, I want a thumbs up, and I want the voice to be excited.
Cool. Yeah.
And on the humans, I want to point. And so, it's still very early for this sort of stuff, but you can imagine like it auto-generating a library of gestures, emotions, not just with the voice, but with the facial expressions of the character. You sort of QCing them and going, yep, okay, that works, that's good. And now suddenly your avatar can be contextually aware of what it's saying, because, the you should try this licorice is delivered with the exact same level of excitement and a smile as, I'm sad grandpa went to the farm upstate.
Yeah.
Like, it's all the same performance, so we got to get more granular.
And one thing I'll say about that is we're working on a presentation for next week. By the way, we are going to be at the Banff Film Festival next week. So if you're there, take a look at us, come find us. We'll say hi to us if you're a listener.
Yeah, all of our listeners that are going to the G7 summit right after that, maybe come a little early, fly those PJs in.
Exactly, why not? One of the things that's so interesting to me about making content for that is just how hard audio can still sometimes be to get what you want out of it, right? Like, you really do have to think about custom models and doing all that sort of work to make it work. Okay, Kevin, we have to keep going. Marc Andreesen has been starting to talk about robotics in a big way. And if you know, Marc Andreesen is the head of A16Z. They are one of the biggest players in the VC business. But in this clip specifically, he said something that I think is important for all of our listeners and viewers to hear.
You've all probably seen, Elon has this Optimus robot that he's building, these humanoid robots. Like the general purpose robotics thing is going to happen, and it's going to happen in the next decade, and it's going to happen at giant scale. And I think there's a plausible argument, which Elon also believes, that robotics is going to be the biggest industry in the history of the planet. It's going to be gigantic.
That is a big deal that you think about it. Now, granted, like, just to be clear, I'm sure they have investments in a lot of robotics work. But I do think we talk about robots on the show a ton. Humanoid robots are the things that if you've been watching our show or listening to our show for a couple of years and you were early on all the stuff we're talking about that's now come to the mainstream, this is the next one, right? And Unitree has just teased the fact that they may be releasing a sub $10,000 robot, which is a big deal. We also know that we've seen the Unitree battle bots that we talked about last week, but having a sub $10,000 humanoid robot is something that's pretty significant.
Listen, we already know that if it can fold laundry, Gavin, you're going to allow it into your household. I would consider one in mine at sub 10K, depending upon what capabilities it had. But, again, this is such a race because as cool as the simulations are, that these things can learn end to end through AI by simulating, walking around, picking things up, the data that they're going to get from it being in the real world, moving about, interacting with people is going to be massive. And as long as it doesn't karate chop, flail its arms like the robot we had a couple weeks ago, I could see these things popping up everywhere.
What if it could play badminton with you, Kevin? Would you like that?
You can charge me 20 bills for that, baby. Are you talking about the robot dog with a little racket on its back, Gavin?
Yeah, so this is from ETH Zurich. They're a research lab. There's a very fun little video of it playing badminton with somebody. What's interesting about that to me is that you often see these robots that are, we've had featured one a long time ago on the show, where it's a tennis launching machine, right? And it will launch a ball back and forth. But an instance where now it's going to be pretty good at tracking where you are. So you can imagine a world where this is for practice for sports stuff, but not just for that. Like, think of all the other use cases for something like this, whether it's like, a training model, or it's something even if you wanted to have, I'm trying to think of some other use case besides training. Like,
I literally can't think of another use case. Badminton or bust. That's all this thing. No,
how about pickleball?
What's crazy is that,
how about pickleball?
No, it could never be good. The robots will never be good enough to play pickleball. You can clip that because it's never going to come back to haunt me. Out of my kitchen, AI. It was trained in a simulated environment, which is interesting, right? And when you watch the fluidity, the speed with which this thing is tracking the object, adjusting its little robot dog position, whipping the thing, it has clearly the knowledge and understanding of where the racket head is, and it's thwacking it back to the player. That is impressive, and this we say it every week. This is as bad as it's going to get. So, yeah, there are implications here. I don't know exactly what they are yet, but there are implications.
Speaking of implications, it's time to talk about the things you talked about and showed off on the internet this week. It's AI. See what you did there.
Sometimes you're scrolling without a care, then suddenly you stop and shout, AI.
Okay, Kevin, we need to talk about the implications of VEO 3, because this may be, I know we've been through a lot of things, this may be my all-time favorite video. I discovered this video on the Bard subreddit, which is a hilarious thing to me, but it has since blown up. Let's play a little bit of this video.
A revolutionary athletic program is challenging everything we thought we knew about cats. Here's Brooke Landry.
You might think a synchronized swimming team for cats sounds insane, but a brave team of trainers is trying to prove the skeptics wrong.
Okay, so if you're not watching
They
what's
coach
on the
Seattle
screen, you see
Meowiness.
very believable local news coverage. It's like they did a great job. This guy, his name is Notice_Analytics, the original poster. And he essentially created a news story about cats synchronized swimming. And like, again, these are the moments of joy you live for if you're following this.
So
yeah, if you're following this world. There's some big surprises towards the end. I don't want to ruin it, but it's a very long, fun video.
You have to go grab the show notes if you don't do the video of this. If you do, then you already know the sequins outfits that the cats are wearing, the little swim goggles, and then when it cuts to the trainer. That's like, it is a laugh out loud moment in a way that not a lot of AI videos get me. This was masterful.
I do want to hint, there's a little bit of a scandal towards the end where the cats might be ingesting substances, and it covered a whole other thing. Anyway, really big shout out to Notice Analytics for doing this. He was basically like kind of wanted to try something, and this is the kind of creative, fascinating stuff that can come out when somebody just does to like dump their brain into AI video.
Yeah. I have seen, this is anecdotal, but on LinkedIn, Gavin, a lot of even folks that were even never AIers coming around to all right, so I decided to see what this was all about. And look at this thing that I just made. And it's usually a little snippet of something or a spec commercial or whatever else. VO3 is inspiring a lot of people. Again, it's anecdotal, but in my little bubble, I'm seeing a lot of people dipping a toe in the VO3 waters and getting inspired.
Totally. And speaking of that, Kev, there's a really cool thing that somebody made, Vexel Hub on their YouTube channel made VexFlix. And what this is Sora and VO3, but kind of integrated into a Netflix UI. And so that it really does look like there's all these kind of fake movies that are playing. And, what's cool about it is you see what is the main video is like Heavy Lies the Cream. And it's like a story of like putting cream into a cup of coffee. There's a fake reality show called Gene Pool. And it's cool because each of these is seen in like a pop-up preview that you would see on Netflix.
The Lex Friedman stand-up special.
Yeah, exactly. All this stuff is stuff that you can do, but what's cool about seeing another creative, cool person putting this into a format we know, it elevates it to something else, which I think is very cool.
I really quickly want to shout out, it's not a visual something, but Jack Dorsey, the original Twitter founder, and if you will, I think he's like I know Rick Rubin is now into vibe coding apparently, but I feel like if there was ever a vibe coder, it would be Jack. He said, quote, "I now spend 2 to 3 hours per day reading research papers and building something with Goose that I didn't think it capable of doing. I never see a line of code and never trapped in an IDE." So Goose is their like Skunkworks project, this agentic coding something. What he's alluding to here, what Jack is saying is the promise of this future that you and I have talked about so many times, which is like, it's great that AI can code, but there's a huge barrier to entry anytime you have to get into an environment where coding actually happens in a meaningful way, like not little web apps, not like tiny little snippets, but like real, actual structural things. And what Jack is saying is that he's spending hours a day writing code without writing code. He's just talking to Goose, and it is building things. And despite, quote, requiring some nudging every now and then, it works nearly every time. So again, hyping his own bag, so to speak, but there's a lot of people saying that is the future of video editing, of coding, of painting, of visual effects. It's not having to directly manipulate the tools. It's interfacing with the machine so that it can do the work for you.
That's right. And it's a great way to kind of end this. And the whole idea of that, like for today's kind of thesis around the show is really like, these are going to keep getting better, as we've said all along. And this is like one of the biggest, like, on paper developers that has existed in the last 10 to 15 years who is diving into these tools full time. So that is it today, everybody. We will see you all next time. Stick around, share us your stuff, and hopefully we'll see you on the internet.
I thought the stick around was you were teasing what's coming up next, Gavin.
What's coming up next? Our next meeting?
I don't know. What are we the lead in for? You came for AI for humans, but stick around because
I guess maybe it's one of the other AI video people that we love and know.
I was going to be like bowling for robots
also
or something.
Possible.
Like, it'd be something like a
VO.
Badminton with the boys. Yeah, like what is the dumb VO3 thing that's coming up
Badminton
after?
with the boys is pretty good. Or maybe it's a bunch of robots that drink in an Irish pub and they talk about their old lives as playing badminton players. Like it's that sort of thing.
Stick around.
Bye, everybody.